such a, as was expressed, it's something that's so close to me, it's something that I care so deeply about, and also something that inspired me to want to run. One of the challenges that we see in so many ways is the development of so many of our young children finding themselves in juvenile detention centers, so many of our young people dropping out, so many of our young people just disconnecting from the entire educational system, seeing so many young people getting into fights after school, and all of these different sorts of things that are happening. And I would say that our schools are in such a state of emergency that I think about this every time I visit a school such as PS 56, where they're talking about their school is going to be phased out next year. When you go to PS 22 and they're talking about next year is going to be their last year there. These are stories that are really challenging in the sense of the principals are also talking about the fact that the challenge of having first graders and eighth graders in the same building. And the fact that the first graders are picking up the habits of the eighth graders, they're picking up the language, they want to wear the clothes, they want to use all of the vulgarity that when you're in junior high school and you're feeling yourself, that you want to utilize. But our young people are picking that up. At the same time, I feel that the co-locations, I feel that one of the first things that I would want to do would be to work to make sure that we end mayoral control, to work with State Senator Belmonte Montgomery, work with Assemblyman David Weckren, who are working to end mayoral control.
You better be working with our Assemblyman.
And Assemblyman Walter Mosley as well, who has just come in and introduced that as well. Excellent point. So true.
Well, when they clean,
That's right.
okay. You're Brooklyn first.
That's right. So one of the things that I want to make sure, and it's just because they had introduced the bill recently, I want to make sure that we do end the mayoral control, but at the same time, I feel that we have to do an entire dismantling and restructuring of the educational system. The whole thing has to be restructured from the bottom up, because our young people, we can't continue to do band-aid attempts here. We fix one school here, one school gets some money, the other one doesn't, and this one's doing well and this one's not, some are falling through the cracks. We have to do a restructuring of the whole system and look at models that are working. One that I'm so very pleased with are the Eagle Academies.
Yes.
All of the schools throughout this district are talking about, because our middle schools are in such a state of crises, how do we implement and get Eagle Academies into our district? And that's something that the Eagle Academy, they've opened one up in the Bronx, they've opened one up in Brownsville, they opened one up in Queens, and they want to open one up here. And I think that that's one model that's working. When we look at Benjamin Banneker under Darryl Rock, that's another example of a school that was working. So we have to make sure that we look at models, but we have to make sure that at the foundation we restructure the entire educational system. As Councilmember James said, one of the things that I want to see is, I don't want to see co-locations in schools. I would want to work first to make sure that co-locations end very abruptly within our school systems, but then at the same time I want to make sure that if the charter school movement, which has become a movement and is here, they need to have their own building. And at the same time, we have to stop the co-locatings, because no matter what, when you co-locate within a school, eventually that primary school is phased out. So it starts off as we're going to share space, and then it ends with, and now you're out. So I want to make sure that we end that co-location, and we work with all of our elected officials to unite around that. Because this impact is affecting African American and Latino students predominantly the most. Because we make up the New York City public school system, and we are the majority. So we have to make sure that this is an issue that we look at, because it affects us culturally, it affects us academically, and it causes a lot of the downfall that you see in society. And that would be the position that I would take, to end co-locations immediately as possible and make sure that schools can thrive and flourish within the existing buildings.